Once upon a time, عاشت فتاة تسمى ليلى مع أمها في قرية تحيط بها غابة. One day, her mother prepared a basket of food and asked her to take it to her grandmother. فقد سمعت بأنها مريضة وبحاجة لمن يعتني بها. The girl walked through the forest and collected some flowers for her. لكن الذئب الماكر كان يتربص بها وسبقها إلى بيت جدتها. To cut a long story short, التهم هذا الذئب الجائع جدتها, and when she came, the big bad wolf ate her as well. I can see the confusion on your faces, and I apologize for any discomfort this might have caused. I assure you that this was the most difficult part of my talk, for me to rehearse and for you to listen to. I speak in English only from now on. I am Bushra Kalakh, a PhD researcher in translation studies at Queen's University Belfast. And this was me telling you my favorite childhood story, Little Red Riding Hood, alternating between the two languages that I'm privileged to speak. Arabic, which is my first language, and English, which I started learning at the age of 10. It would have been much more comfortable if I told you this story in its Arabic version, with all the differences it has, and provided an English translation. But I wanted to give you a glimpse of what happens in the brain of a translator, listening, thinking, and speaking different languages. I'm not here, though, to talk about what's lost or gained in translation, or when you shift across languages. Not to undermine the value of language, but I think that this idea is well spread. I'm here to share with you what my passion for translation and relatively brief time I spent studying and practicing it taught me. Günter Grass, the German novelist and Nobel Prize winner, said about translation that it is that which transforms everything so that nothing changes. I'm not sure I agree with the second part of the quote, because if we take a moment to think about it, simply getting the message changes everything. There are many metaphors about translation, or cliches. One of them likens a translator to a bridge. Well, what type of a bridge? What makes the bridge and why? I have no intention to delve into engineering to answer this question, but the simplest meaningful way a bridge helps people is to cross from one side to the other. This is change. Another typical view likens translators to conduits. Well, if an electrical conduit keeps electricity coming to your home, or if a conduit of rainwater keeps plants growing in a field, then I can't think of better examples of change. Another one likens translators to a group of blind men trying to describe an elephant. This one is my personal favorite because it captures exactly how I feel when I translate from Arabic. Yes, Arabic. Because if you think that Arabic is easy for me, then let me tell you that there are 22 different Arab countries across 2 continents speaking their own version of Arabic, with varieties in each country and different uses of sounds, words, expressions, you name it. So being bilingual does not help me much here. So I consulted an Arabic dictionary to better understand what the word translation means. I found that it could mean more than transferring meaning from one language to another. It could mean to clarify, to tell the biography of someone. When stripped to its origin, it could mean to speak about the unknown, to guess without evidence, or to stone someone. So, how can any one of us, after this, assume that translation does not change? Or how can we ask translators to be like phantoms hovering in the backstage? Translators are actively engaged in the communicative situation, and they are bilingual in the sense that they can convey a message in their own voice. Why can't we translate with the intention to change? What changes us better than stories? And what better situation to learn different stories than when mediating a conversation across languages, cultures, and more importantly, between individuals. Stories change us. And to clarify, let me retell the story that I started with, in English this time. Once upon a time, a girl was born. Somewhere, but not home. And there was a big bad wolf in her story. Not a real one, but it chased her everywhere. It became part of her, like a scar that never goes away. Her big bad wolf was a passport. And what is in this passport? A single word. Refugee. If a refugee is someone who fled home, then how do you become a refugee when you have never been home? This is the story of one Palestinian refugee born in diaspora. Those people suffer in a limbo where they are denied basic rights by birth, when they never experienced what homeland means. And this is just the tip of an iceberg of countless other stories that need bridges or conduits to tell, because the world has been pretending to be the blind man for more than 70 years. This was an exercise in translation, one story translated into another, and a person translated into a story. And this person is me. Translation, I'm sorry. When we think about translation, you might ask yourself, translation change stories, what connects them? Well, if we can find a metaphor that likens translators to a group, to storytellers, then we enable them to change the stories of suffering simply by telling them. If we think about translation, if we think about translators, sometimes they don't label themselves as translators, but they have animated stories, redrew maps, made films, and even turned numbers into visual narratives. These are translators as activists, educators, narrators, changers. And translation for and about a cause is an act of resistance. Resistance is a pursuit of change. Now, let me go back to Little Red Riding Hood. Whether it's a hood, a cap, a hat, or a completely different garment. What this story taught me, coming from a place that is thousands of kilometers away, is that although I come from this place, I'm much closer to you than I imagined, thanks to translation in different forms. As a child, I never knew that my favorite story comes from 17th century European folktales and has several variations. As an adult, I had those eyebrow-lifting moments when I learned that this story was transformed into a musical, a song, a film, an animation, rewritten as a poem, and even adapted in video games. If there's one idea to be taken from my talk today, then it's that we need to reclaim translation beyond the confines of language. The idea is that translation is more than an academic field exclusive for linguists. It is a meeting point where people can interact in a virtual space that is as real as they are. And I don't mean the virtual reality that technology created and disconnected people more than ever. I mean the space where you and I can meet knowing that we have something translatable to share. We need to reclaim translation beyond the confines of language. I say this standing on the shoulders of giants, the scholars who have been saying this for a long time. We need to view it as the transformation that is intended to effect change. Mahatma Gandhi once said, "Be the change that you wish to see in the world." And if you ask me how I try to live by this, my answer is, I translate. Thank you.